So Salihu, talk to me about your journey so far. Why poetry? How did you get started?
Well, poetry is something that I started with as a child, but wasn't really encouraged into doing much of taking my craft further. I remember back in my junior secondary school, we were given an assignment in literature to write a poem or submit a poem. I can't really recall. So I submitted my first poem that I wrote about mango trees, and then my English teacher in my notebook wrote exactly where did you copy this from. So which is kind of funny, and my mom got really angry. She wanted to go to school and kind of challenge the teacher. So basically what I say, I didn't get that encouragement from my teacher, especially at that point. So but later on in life, later on, like 10 years later, I was able to pick on poetry more consistently. I wrote a few poems while I was on my undergraduate, but I was an engineering student and our school was quite tough, so I didn't have much time to reflect on creativity. It was during my NYC era, during my service year, when I was quite bored, then I jumped into writing. I can recall my first poem. I was kind of in my lodge. Then I wrote my only friend or something like that. Yes, it's kind of about solitude and silence. So I think poetry is a way of expression, like a lot of people will say. And then there comes a period that, if whether you want it or not, I think we're all sort of poets. It's just some take it further. Like there's always a point in your life where poetry is almost like the tool, if you just assess that part of your being, to emote. It's something that allows you to do that. Whether poetry doesn't have to be written, poetry is in nature, it's in our expression, it's in life,
So you believe, so to you, performance poetry or stage poetry, as they call it, is actual poetry. You take it to be poetry, unlike those who say stage poetry is not poetry at all. They say spoken word is not poetry at all. So you agree that it is poetry. You're only insisting. I want to be sure I get you right. You're only insisting that quality should be maintained.
Yeah, and that you don't expect what's meant for two different audiences to be of the same shape and form. So they have to be a little bit of a difference. But to say that it's not poetry at all is something that I would not agree to, except if they create a different genre of something, like maybe like motivational speakers. Some of them, they spoke, they do have that kind of stuff, but it's not it's mostly may not be poetic or something like that. So what I say is that once the spoken word carries poetic elements of good standard, then it should be considered as poetry.
Okay. So Samson Kukubo was on this show some time ago, and he's talked about how the music industry could benefit from having poets write music lyrics. Is this something that you think is feasible? Is this something that you look forward to yourself?
Well, I'm not very a music person, but for example, we have a lot of substandard lyrics out there, in terms of in the music industry that, you just, especially in Nigeria, which before you find a singer that has a meaningful artwork, when you look at the lyrics themselves and you take away the beats, then you find that it's just most often than not shouting or something, a melodious nothingness. You understand? Some people have the voice, but they may not really have a message. So I agree sometimes. For example, I would say I agree. Poets writing lyrics, or even musicians themselves that will put more effort into their lyrics would do better for the music industry. I will cite an example, not a Nigerian, obviously, is somebody that people well appreciate his lyric, Ed Sheeran, you know. So for example, you know, his words, even though he may not call himself a poet, but they have those kind of quality that you can have in poetry, you know. And also there is one of my, not very known, that I like his work, you know. His name is Sleeping at Last. It's a band actually. So those guys, with the guy, their lyrics are always of poetic nature. I think to me, it's one of the best lyricists out there.
I think given the context of our conversation, we could say that music is a fusion of page and performance poetry. You know, with of course some technicalities. Like
well, music at the very basic definition is something that comes from the word muse. I don't know the etymology, but I would say that music came from the word muse. You know.
Are you just saying that?
Yeah.
Did you just come up with that?
It should be that. It has to be. You know, music is muse, and music basically anything that is any sound that is of pleasing nature, be it birds, be it the ocean, anything is called musical, you know. But if
beauty, sometimes.
Yeah. So yeah, with relation to sound, you know. So sometimes I think genre comes into play. You know, you can't call all music poetry because obviously some are not, you know. But for example, the genre of rap, which is basically rhythm and poetry, you know. So that one you can see it has a lot of poetic elements in the rhythm, the rhymes, the wordplay, you know. So those are poetic elements. Whether people call themselves poets or not, they have poetic elements in them. So to say that music is a fusion of written and spoken word, I think it would not be really fair because I think it comes to genre, you know.
And music is a bit more?
No, that's basically what I just said. Some music genre they have poetic elements, while some music genres don't have any poetic elements. Though I'm not really a music person like that, so but I know I can say rap has a very well to do with poetry. What I would say basically that would differentiate poetry, spoken word poetry, and music would be music relies a lot on the beats, the extra sounds, the vocality, while poetry is more dependent on the message, you know, and the words and the what do you call this? Being this when somebody eloquence,
yeah,
you know,
or delivery.
Yes, delivery.
Which music also
music depends. No, a lot of music, you know, music. That's why I say once you take out the beat, it becomes something else. So, but music, even performance poetry, they don't put a lot of. Even those that do put music into their performance poetry, it's not reliant on the music itself.
True.
But the beat, it's not reliant on the beat itself, but it's just there to complement the message. Well,
Sorry, I think that it's a conversation that we'll have someday. You know, I would love to have this conversation with a group of poets and musicians and try to find out what the difference really is, because it's a bit sketchy, and that's why we'll end up doing roundabout conversation.
Yes, but I think one thing I would like to mention that just came to mind is one of my favorite. I don't read much, but one of my favorite books, Lyrics Ali by Lila Abu Lela. The protagonist is Noor Abu Zaid, which is based on her, I think one of her uncles in real life. But in the book, Noor Abu Zaid is a poet, you know, who had a accident and he couldn't walk, you know, so he started writing poetry. You know, like I said, there's always that moment where poetry would be like a means, a tool that you can use to emote, which everyone can use. But what different between poets is people that are consistent with that. So he started writing, and obviously the link between that. So most of his work were sung by the musicians in Sudan.
Okay.
So like I said, it depends on the quality. So here, like what you asked me earlier. So he writes poets, and singers will sing them. And in Sudan, he became very popular.
Like in northern Nigeria.
Exactly.
Like you have the praise singers.
Exactly.
The poets in northern Nigeria.
Exactly.
So that's why I'm.
That one is poetic. I would say
it's
that one
poetic.
is
However,
poetic,
it's also music.
Yeah.
That's why I was saying that it's a conversation I would like to have extensively with like have musicians and poets talk about their craft. What are the differences, so we could have a better understanding. But seeing as you're a poet and I'm not a musician.
Yes. I mean, I have the full picture.
Yeah. So now let's talk about your book.
Okay.
You have a new book coming out.
Yeah.
And what can you tell me about the book?
Well,
if you met me,
yes.
Give me an elevator pitch. If you met me inside an elevator, and we have few seconds before we go our ways, and you want to sell the book to me, what would you tell me? Well,
it depends on whether we are on Burj Al Khalifa. If we are on the elevator on Burj Al Khalifa, I think I'll have at least 2 minutes.
No, you go hotel.
You go hotel. Well, we have like 30 seconds. So, well, I'll say my book. Its name is. I have a book. I have a book. This awesome book that is about life. Principles of life. That is poetic, short, and precise, and it's something that will relate to a lot of people. That are looking for ways to how to do things about life, how to transcribe the reality of life, how to make meaning of life. So I will tell you that this is what my book is about, and any reader that reads into it will relate to 1 or 2 poems that talk about life in general. So it appeals to almost everyone, any living soul. Though some poems may not be with the principles that every reader will align to, but it's something that talks about the basic human needs, feelings, heartbreak, grief, how to find love, how to move on, how to live with people. It talks a lot about people because it talks about the world, how to survive in the world, how to view different perspective of life. There's a poem that I wrote, how to look at glass houses. The perspective of people living in glass houses. Basically, glass houses means people living a flashy life, basically. So it talks about different aspects of life, and I think I have 30 seconds, and I would like you to publish my book.
Well, that was more than 30 seconds.
Well,
but I'm so
yeah,
I would definitely love to see what you have. So, what you talked about heartbreak, the different facets of life. What inspired this project, and how long did it take you to write it?
Well, as poets, one thing I like about poetry, it's instantaneous. It's not like a novel that you have to have a idea that's stretching from the starting, the end. It can be instantaneous. It can be different things that come together. So actually, there are poems that I was writing around 2019. I think I released the book in 2019. But a lot of them I wrote in 2019, early 2019 and late 2018. So I just started writing poems that have to do with how to do things, that have similar theme and texture, and writing, the nature of the writing. Then I was like, I had an earlier manuscript which when I sent it to an editor, I didn't get a very good feedback. So then when I see this, I was like, okay, why not make this into a collection? Then when I put them together, then I realized, okay, they make sense as a collection. So It's basically why it happens so is because I usually write about life. I write about humans' perspective on life. So even then, when I decided to write that poem, I just say, okay, I need more of this kind of poems. So I went back to my archives and I pulled some poems from even 2017 that has the exact same texture, and then I wrote more on that on that kind of theme. I wrote like 5 more, because the book is not. I tried to put just quality poems in there. So what made me write that book is not that, and I want to write it anyway. It's just the way I look at the world from inception. So it just so happens that I put all those poems together, and I still write on those kind of things continuously. But maybe this collection has that kind of a feel of how to. But most of my writings are about perspective and principles, human emotions, feelings. So the human person. I do a lot of introspective poems. So
Nice.
so I think that's what happens to, I think poetry could be meditation.
I agree. Yeah, I should bring this up with you. What do you? Two things. You were at Labab with us last year,
Yes.
and you participated in a panel, and of course the evening readings that was hosted by Practice. Yeah. During the Practice hangout in the morning, where Abubakar CD was a guest, there was a conversation around poetry, and certain people expressed their surprise at the quality of the poems in CD's collection, and they were surprised that CD was a Northerner, that a Northerner could write that beautifully, so beautifully. And then they said, a woman, I don't know if you remember her, actually said that we should go back to the north and train more poets. So, and I look at that. This is a two-faced question, yeah? I consider most of the commentary that's made by people. I would like to know how you feel about that, and if you had experienced such commentary. That's one. And secondly, I think that people say a lot of things like that about the North because of the culture of we're very conservative people, culturally, and then due to religious values. So, do you agree with me that it is time for creative people in the North to have a rethink about this high level of conservativeness?
Well, I will start with the second question. People always have the belief that poets, I think it's the world that we live in currently, It's the world that we live in currently that's talking about we live in a quite modernist world and a lot of liberals, So, but I don't think my own, I would say, depends on your message. You don't have to conform to what people are writing to write poetry, be it conservative poetry that you are going to write, or a liberal poetry that you are going to write, or modernist poetry that you are going to write. It doesn't actually matter. Your message, it depends on your personal beliefs and what your ethics and moral ethics, what you consider what guides your life, Obviously, in the North, we have culture and religion to guide our life, and I don't think that limits poetry. We have a lot of poets in the Islamic religion that write a beautiful poetry. They write beautiful poetry that portrays the religious values, So it doesn't have to be that poets have to be writing something that's not conventional, non-conformist. There's always the idea that I don't actually subscribe to. You let people write what they feel they want to write about, and based on their own values. Poetry can be, you can write about a mango, you can write about basically eating and make it poetic, So the message is there. It could be anything that you can make it into a poetic element. So telling Northerners to remove their conservative nature in order to write poetry is telling somebody to remove their skin so that they can write poetry. This is who they are, this is their value, this is their cultural, this is their norms, And then it doesn't stop anyone from writing poetry. Writing is a perspective on life that people are somehow kind of, I don't know, in the current situation that we are having, we kind of impose on other people. You read people's work and appreciate the poetry in it. Not your message might not be the same. You may not have the same values, but doesn't mean that they are not writing poetry. For example, I will go back to the first question. CD, even in the North, CD's poetry is different. You know, it's different from. It's quite unique, actually. You know, and when it's one of the first books that I read, maybe back some time back when I started writing poetry, and my friend sent the first chapbook of the chapbook version of his book, and I read it. I was like, wow, this is marvelous. You know, there is a way that he writes about mysticism, you know, about meditation, about the surreal parts of life, you know, the higher existence.
CD is an insanely creative person.
So I would say, Akuma, you see, he still somehow maintains his. On some parts, he was out of. He breaks the box, you know, and that's why I say. So I think his work. I have received I don't know. I've been in Lagos a while, and actually not only poetry. A lot of times when you speak English, or you know, there's a kind of barrier between the north and the south in Nigeria. People from the north don't often come to the south, and people from the south don't often go to the north. So there is stereotype that's in our heads that are often politicized. So, but a lot of times people, they will like, you are writing your poet, you are from north, and they will be surprised if they go to the north, the kind of quality poets that we have, you know, and which will shape, for example, see this way of writing, because it's kind of similar to the way Hausa poets write. Poets like Sa'ad Zangur and Dankwairo, you know, they have they are some of them, they are singers, but they are actually poets. If you look at
that's
it.
what I was saying
Because in the north, the word, they call it waka and waki, they call it waki, which basically means poetry if you translate it. So we have a lot of good poets, but obviously I wrote it somehow, even in the north, somehow that waki has been a little bit washed down a bit. Not waki, that original waki is not actually much anymore. We have this Hausa singers now that have kind of taken the atmosphere there with their songs from movies, Hausa movies, which those ones I will not classify them as poetic at all.
I think
on a general note,
there are still those poets who, most of them find them at bars, at parks,
at
sometimes at events, and they come and do their rendition and whatnot.
You see, there is this guy Gambo, but that one is, I think here is the previous generation Gambo. He sings for thieves. You understand? I think Sada has written about him, Gambo Miwaka Barai. So that guy is very good with his poetic lyrics, but now we have people that write for all these Hausa movies. But I think it's there, but it's not actually encouraged like that. You know, I think maybe it's the modernization that has affected people there.
Okay.
My favorite poets are people that are close to me. Actually, those are the people that I read more often than not. I like Habibatu's work, Habibatu X. I like
Habibatu X, my Upnet crush.
Yes.
I do not know her though. I've never met her. Nasiba and Sidi have a way of saying that she's my wife, my poetic wife.
Yeah, she, like, if you are about the daring type of poetry, the daring type, it would be her, and likewise Hawa Saleh Abubakar, and I like Umar Sidi's works, you know, the mysticism, the looking at the world, because I like the way he writes. I like this kind of, because I try to also sit down and look at the world, you know, observe the world, which is most of what he does in his poems. I like, if we are going abroad, I like there is no popular poet, Laura Lamb Brown Lavoy. She has this poem called 100, and on just the 100th anniversary of the Titanic, I think it's my favorite poem of all time, to some extent. So I recited that poem. I like her. She's not that popular, but she's a fun poet. She talks poetry when she talks. I watch a lot of her interviews. I like, if we're talking about the more popular ones, I like Langleaf's writing, because Langleaf is somehow, I like the nature she writes with simplistic words and poetic and rhythmic and also carry a lot of meaning. I would mention Back Home again. I often compare her works to Nasiba. I say Nasiba, you write like Langleaf. So Nasiba Babali will also be on my list. And
well, is she as troublesome as Nasiba though? Is she as troublesome as Nasiba? Because Nasiba is trouble.
Nasiba is trouble for you, maybe.
Sidi, no, you can't do this. Sidi is a madman. Nasiba is the troublesome one.
Yeah, well, okay. So I would mention maybe one or two more poets in our midst that I read Maria's work, Maria Sidi. Yeah.
I see what you're trying to do. You're very careful not to omit certain people so that they don't corner you. But
well, if I'm going to do that, I'll mention like 20 people, because actually a lot of my circle are poets. All of my circle are poets, you know.
So this is what we'll do. I actually final question, then we're gonna wrap this up so that I save you the trouble.
Okay.
Of having to explain yourself.
Yes.
Yes or no?
Okay.
Do you agree with me? I think a Sidi's book is a poet, is the Bible of poetry. No, that's not the word. It's the curriculum of poetry. Do you agree that it is a book that should be taught, that every poet should read and should be taught at school, at different schools of poetry?
Yes, actually it does. The book entirely, almost all the poems are about poetry, you know. And if you are going to, like, I think it's that because there is instructions to a poet, you know. There is the Peninsula of Poets, yes. There is the Poetic Manifesto,
yes.
You know. So it's something that's kind of give like it's even inspired an idea for me of a ministry of poetry as a kind of a fictional story. So I think it can be that. It can be that.
What do you think of Praxis as a platform entirely, and then what Praxis does? What's the relevance of the work that Praxis does to the industry?
Well, in the Nigerian industry of a writing industry, it's a writing industry that has a lot of writers, but it doesn't have a lot of platforms. What I'm saying is that there is the business angle, you know, of writing in Nigeria is something that a lot of people are has not given it the perspective, you know. When it comes to publishing, making money out of writing, it has not been, what do you call it, as well. So there's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of gaps that can be filled, you know. So because we write quite alright, but even for promotions and even for quality print, you know, and even for value creation, the value creation of the writing industry is not there. Even our Nigerian readers that read, they mostly read non-Nigerian writers. So we have Nigerian writers, but they don't know about them except the popular ones, you know. So I think it's the angle, those gaps, is what Praxis is trying to fill, you know, to bring the entire value chain of the writing industry from the writer in his home writing to it reaching the reader and feedback, and so those gaps, I think Praxis Magazine is doing a good job at filling those gaps. And once that is done, that will make the writing industry, especially if Praxis do a very good job at it, it will make the writing industry commercialized. It will have economic value and people will look more into it, because a lot of investors now, they look at it, they don't see the value. They don't see money coming out. And a lot of people are profit oriented, So that angle is what I think not only practice but other people should look into, because in abroad people have taken understand that literature, be it writing poetry or whatever, literature is very important in the community, because ever after we are gone, those manuscripts are the thing that will say about our generation. So I think people need to understand the importance of writers and writing your own immediate environment by yourself. That's why we have problems with Nigerian history. Most of it is not written by Nigerians. So if practice does that, we'll have a very good valuable industry, writing industry. And I say kudos to them, and I wish them luck. Well, I wish you luck. I wish you luck.
Thank you. So, quickly.
Yes.
You pitched to me earlier about your manuscript.
Yes.
I believe you were talking to me as a business person, publisher,
yes,
and filmmaker.
Yeah.
But now, talk to me or the viewers as potential customers. Sell this to them.
Well,
what's your pitch? Why should they buy your book?
Well, you should buy the book because obviously we just talk about value creation of the industry. I think I'm talking to Nigerian readers here. We should consume more of our literature. So I think that would be one. And then on the book is a poetry. I can recall, this is the paperback version. I released the chapbook version in 2019, which was had 1,000 plus downloads in the first 24 hours. Now it's like about 3,000 downloads currently, and it even won the Green Author Prize awarded by Words, Rhymes and Rhythms.
Nice.
So yes, nice. So it has already have some sort of credibility, and from the readers that receive. If you are someone once told me that she doesn't read poetry like that, or she doesn't understand poetry. But for my own, she gets headache when she reads poetry. But when she read my book, she didn't have any of that. And a lot of people that are non-poets, they say
That's awesome feedback.
Yes. I was really happy to say no headache. So I say no headache poetry. So this is a no headache poetry, actually. I believe Sada says in his introduction to the book, he say this is a book that has simple words but they convey deeper meaning. So this is what the book is. I believe in making life less complex. I believe people say things are complicated, but the truth is always simple and straightforward. But people don't like to look at the truth directly, so hence they go deviate from the truth and then makes things complicated, and they say life is complicated, but in reality life is not complicated and the truth is straightforward, but people choose not to do that. So in this book I try to be it's as simple as it can be, and you try to see the world on a plain ground, white and black, no gray. Well,
so I can see there's
you can see the cover is also white and black. So
yeah, and I can see that there's a pre-order thing going on.
Yeah, currently the book, we are looking at having the book to the audience, to the readers, end of October. I'm looking at end of October, but the pre-order will start soon, hopefully next week, Saturday. That will be, we are 27th, so maybe first week of October the pre-order will start for 2 weeks, hopefully, or less. So the pre-order will be, if you pre-order you get free delivery within Nigeria, so that's a bonus for you. And the book will likely come out before the end of October. You can pre-order the book from my website. When the pre-order is out, the website will be available. that you can pre-order mahesalihu.com. Yeah, mahesalihu.com.
You owe me money.
Yeah, mahesalihu.com. You can pre-order there, or you can go to mahesalihu.com/book. Yeah, the book should be going for 2,000 naira only. Yeah, and then pre-order would also get an autograph copy, and they will be the first readers. I would say what the value that the reader is going to get from this book is something. I'm not talking about because it's my book. It's something that people say to me after they have read the first chapbook, because I don't like to speak about my personal views about my work, because actually I didn't think it's going to have such impact. But the value that the reader will get from this book is not something that it's not a book that you just read once and you just borrow your friend, So yeah, I read The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, and I said to all my friends that I'm not borrowing this to anybody, because this is a book that you go back to. Likewise, my book, I remember my friend, she said this is a book that I will have to go back to in any time in maybe crisis, life crisis or something, to reflect and understand the world. Because like I said, it tries to see the world from a black and white perspective. Almost everything about the book is black and white. The cover and the pages, and there's illustrations. There's new poems from the chapbook, and then it tries to see the world. The title, "How to View the World from a Glass Prism." You try to see the world as it is, without barriers. So it tries to reflect all the realities that are there. So it's something that you go back to, and that's why I precisely make it only quality books, or only quality poems. So it's only 27 poems that are there. It's only 20. The chapbook has 17 poems, so I added 10 additional poems and illustrations to the work, And my try to make all my writing most often than not are very straight to the point. So it's something that you can easily have in the back of your hand, even if the book is not with you. So you can get it, and I hope you go and buy it, and I hope it serves as a valuable item on your shelf.
Amen. Amen.